from nature's factory to his studio to my possession. It really is an honor. And there's nothing like the real thing. We had been totally played by the Afghani guards. What came next was a total disbelief, because from that day and for the next 30 days, all borders were closed entering into Pakistan due to the Islamic conference and security that had been ordered. We were now stuck in the Kipher Pass, stuck for 30 days in what is now known as one of the most dangerous places on this planet for a white Westerner. We could not return to Afghanistan without visas, and we could not enter Pakistan. Even then, being tribal, one could not move more than a quarter of a mile radius on this border of no man's land. I would be living on peanuts, rice, and green mint tea for the next 30 days. 150 years ago, this is where a whole British regiment was ambushed and completely massacred except for one soldier. We literally were there only under the protection of the famed Kipher riflemen. I came to know this place as one of the most dangerous black markets in this world for guns, drugs, slave trade, and black money. About 2 weeks into our exile, a British diplomat showed up at the Kipher Pass border. It is a favorite place where foreign diplomats would come to visit to bring guests to show off the famed Kipher riflemen and the mountains of this famous place. His first question to us was, "What are you doing here?" We shared our story of being stuck here because of our expired visas and the borders being closed because of the Islamic conference. He guaranteed he would get us out of there, for this was not a place to be stuck at. Another week passed without hearing from the British diplomat again. But around the third week, an American diplomat taking a tour of the pass noticed we were here and asked us the very same question. He also said he would do whatever it took to get us out of here. Literally in 2 days, the American diplomat had arranged visas for us to descend down the pass and reside in Peshawar in a guest house. We were told that we could stay the remaining week in Peshawar until the borders were open, and then we could transit through Pakistan. I suspect it must have been a safe house that was under the command of the U.S. State Department. Who knew? But at least we were in a proper building with actual food instead of sleeping under the open sky with hardly anything to eat. The caveat to this story was that we learned there was going to be a parade while we were stuck in Peshawar. We all decided to go and see who this important major leader was, which the parade was for. It turned out to be Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, who had just taken control of Libya. This was 1973, and I stood watching less than 15 feet away as Colonel Gaddafi's open motorcar drove by. Until this day, I can clearly see his face in my mind. The Kipher Pass today is, of course, one of the most dangerous places to be for a Westerner. Back then, it was dangerous in different ways for an American or European, but still extremely dangerous for a non-Muslim to be stuck there. This is one of the many stories that I look back upon and can consider as a character-building moment in my life. In this case of being trapped in the Kipher Pass for all those days, I learned to pay attention, show respect, and trust I will know the right action when called upon. The most significant thing I've learned is not to let fear dominate my thoughts and feeling so I can be clear to make the right decisions at the right times. Stay open and don't be quick to judge. Two powerful principles that have been true character builders for me all these years. I crossed into India on my 21st birthday. I giggle thinking that many of my friends on their 21st would be running to a bar to have their first legal or alcoholic drink, while I was stepping into a realm of mystery halfway around the world from home. As I shared previously about my experience with the white-bearded saint in rags, there were many more stories like that one once I entered into India. I was once told by a Native American elder that many more miracles can happen in a culture that expects and accepts them versus our Western culture that does not give much credence or consider them to be real. This was for sure my experience. Often out of nowhere, one would come up to me and know exactly what I was going through and help me find my way, either by pointing me in the right direction or imparting wisdom to this mystical world that saints and holy men of this country had expired, written and logged the pathways of. I ended up living in India in a remote ashram in the southern rainforest of the Mysore Mountains for 2 years, meditating and living with the local tribal people. For India, with its 10,000 years of spiritual history, I thought I finally understood what I was going through and could begin to answer the complexity of this inner world with the outer physical dimensions. I have continued to travel back to India these last 40 years on business, but more importantly, I have come to know India as my second home, half American, half Indian in my soul. My Indian friends often comment on the fact I know more about their history and spirituality than they do. Upon my return home from world travels and after living in this remote monastery for almost 2 years, I was lost as to what to do with my life. So I turned to art as a way to express my intelligence, but after discovering the art of gem carving, I knew I had to learn the science behind the art. Gem crystals were a wonder of the earth, and I wanted to know everything I could about my medium. I had never encountered an art that required so much science as a foundation. I had a very strong urge to return to college and learn about the material I was working with. I enrolled in courses such as geology, mineralogy, chemistry, and higher mathematics to help me understand these natural substances that our earth created that was the very medium of my art. Once back in college and interested in the subject, I excelled in these courses because I had a deep passion and strong interest to understand these rare and exotic minerals. That was the very medium I was creating with. All of a sudden, math and science that eluded me as a child and teenager were now subjects that I found myself at the top of my class and deeply in touch with and intrinsically understood. As a child that could barely pass these courses in high school, I found myself maintaining a 3.95 grade point average in college. The mystical journey to the core of the atom became validated as I sat in classes and listened to my professors talk about this quantum world of the atom. I came to know my art medium intimately and understood the principles of light refraction, mineral formation, and the physics and chemistry of crystallography. All of a sudden, I was using both hemispheres of my brain. It was an art form like no other I had ever explored. I now felt that the questions that perplexed and eluded me were all coming together in some grand theory, and that I had now found my destiny and purpose. Gem cutting is a true synergy of art and science that has motivated and captivated my passion for all these decades. I eventually went on to get my degree in gemology in residence from the Gemological Institute of America in 1978. My travels proved to be one of those life-changing choices that set my course to a fulfilling career as an artist of gems and in life in general. It was my PhD university degree to life and the world of human relationships, the many different cultures and its people. I know I can look back on this period in my life as the grand theory of everything. My course was set, and now I was to go about living the life of meaning we all feel propelled to find and discover, living one's true purpose and destiny. I am not in any way trying to downplay the purpose of costume jewelry, but let me tell you, there is something about wearing real, natural, intrinsic gemstones. Gem cutting is a science. It does take a lot of work. It's not just something that you just wake up one day and decide to do. It is an actual art, and you do need to have that passion because you're working with something that's generally very, very small. If you look at most gemstones in jewelry, they're not that large. They're very, very small. A lot of times we see gemstones, they don't start off that small. They actually start off quite sizable in the hand. By the time they cut it down to the size that they want for whatever particular piece of jewelry, it is so much smaller than the original size. So imagine trying to cut facets into something that you can barely hold in your hand. You have to use 1 or 2 fingers to hold it and cutting it so that when the light passes through, you get that reflection of color and you get to see the inside of the stone. It really does take concentration. It really does take dedication And this is why this is one of the reasons why I wanted to get into the actual mind of the artist, so that we can see what it really takes for that piece of jewelry sitting there looking at you and speaking to you and connecting with you. It's an amazing sight to see. I find it to be awe-inspiring. And to have it in my collection, I am honored. I am so humbled that I am a custodian of some of these beautiful works of art, from nature's factory to his studio to my possession. It really is an honor. And there's nothing like the real thing. There's just a different feeling that you get. There is a different presence about you when you are wearing it. And then to be able to connect it to someone who is an ancestor, knowing that, you know, as I said in my other videos, this stone comes from the same place where your ancestors hailed. Isn't it wonderful? I think it's a great conversation starter, and I think that it is an amazing way to tell stories. Now, I have my favorites. I do have multiple favorites, and I have different reasons for them being my favorites. But there is this one stone that when I saw it, it immediately put me on this path, and I have been enjoying it ever since. So we're going to continue on learning more about the science and the artistry behind gem cutting. See you next time.